Okay, welcome back, scholars. This is part 2 of 4 in our lectures about the First World War. And this lecture will focus on the outbreak of the war. It's called The World at War. And it focuses on basically initial moves from both sides, and then kind of where it ends up before we go into, basically sort of a stalemate, okay, which we'll talk about what that means a little bit later. So first, here on this opening slide, we have an actual photograph, not a political cartoon or anything. And this is a photograph of soldiers in the First World War going off to war. And I don't know, how would you describe these guys? I know how I'd describe them. They look happy, right? Look at this guy. He looks thrilled. They're excited, okay? All of them, they're smiling, they're heading off to war. I think it speaks to the time period, sort of the idea of war during that time was still sort of a, I don't know, romanticized idea. The idea of like glory on the battlefield and the honor, and this truly also speaks, I think, to the optimism of how confident they were going into the war. Each country sort of thought, our nation's the greatest and our military's the biggest and best, and we'll be home by Christmas. So this will be a quick war. See you soon, right? And I think as the war drags on, they have to confront the reality that this will be unlike any other war in history. It'll be the first industrialized war, okay? All right, so first slide here, after the assassination, sort of picking up where we left off. After the Archduke is assassinated by Serbian nationalists, or terrorists, if we want to call them that, Austria-Hungary vowed to punish the Serbs. Afraid that Russia is, of course, going to support Serbia because, again, Russia being the largest of the Slavic nations, sort of seeing itself as a protector of the smaller ones, Austria-Hungary figured it would be first smart or wise of them to secure the support of Germany, their ally, right? And make sure that they sort of have Germany's backing if they're going to make a move here against Serbia. So Austria-Hungary issues Serbia an ultimatum. This is another one of your vocabulary words. It basically means do this or else, okay? And in this case, there were 4 things that Serbia had to do. Serbia failed to do so, and again, this ties in with the Serbian officials that had been implicated in the terrorist plot. And Austria-Hungary says, well, 3 out of 4 is not good enough, so we will now declare war, and they do so on July 28th. And they expected a quick victory, and rightfully so. Had it just remained between Serbia and Austria-Hungary, Austria-Hungary probably would have had a very quick victory, but we know that the alliance system is going to drag in the other major powers. Okay? Okay, so the mobilization of Europe. Russia, of course, wanting to protect Serbia, prepares to support them by mobilizing their troops. Remember, we said that means preparing your army for war, okay? And as they mobilize their troops, and they are getting all their troops geared up and sent to the front lines, or you could say to the west, right? This is a threat to Germany, and Germany demands that Russia stop, okay? Because it does pose a major threat to Germany. Germany can't be caught, with its guard down, so they basically have to mobilize their army, okay? And they ask Russia to stop. Russia says, don't tell us what to do. So now we have 2 countries mobilizing their armies. Also knowing that France was going to support Russia, because if you remember, the Triple Entente is Russia, France, and Great Britain. Germany is worried about being caught up in a 2-front war, meaning they'd have to fight on their western front against France and on their eastern front against Russia. So now that they've already declared war on Russia, they figure, you know what? Why not just get a jump on France and declare war on France, which they do just 2 days later. Okay? Continuing. Now they basically have to deal with enemies on both sides, they being Germany. So their plan is not to attack France through the common border that they share, because that's obviously a heavily fortified area. It's where the majority of the French forces are. Their goal is to invade France through Belgium, which, if you picture a map of Europe, and I'll show you one in just a minute, Belgium's in the north, basically right between France and Germany. Belgium's a neutral country, okay? And it promised to stay neutral and would not help belligerents, another vocab word that just means warring nations. But Germany does not honor this neutrality, and it basically marches its troops into Belgium, occupying Belgium on its way to invade France. So this is sort of the last straw for Great Britain, and Great Britain will declare war on Germany later that day in August. Continuing, you got the dominoes falling here, right? Japan will join the Triple Entente. Italy will basically end up on the side of the Triple Entente, which, if you recall, and I know that we didn't really focus on this in the previous lecture, but it was originally part of the Triple Alliance, but now it is part of the Triple Entente. We will have the Ottoman Empire and Bulgaria both enter on the side of the Triple Alliance. Okay, so you can see more and more countries getting dragged in. So who are the warring nations? Okay, there's two powerful sides. All right, we have first the Central Powers. Our primary, countries that we'll focus on there are just going to be Germany and Austria-Hungary. The advantages include easy communication because they, share sort of a common territory and borders. That's good for rapid troop movement as well. Germany has an excellent army. The Allied powers, the primary players there are Great Britain, France, and Russia, the former, Triple Entente, right, along with their other allies. Their advantage is that they do have a little bit more manpower, so more soldiers, greater industrial capacity, especially thanks to Great Britain, and then also the Royal Navy, the biggest, most powerful navy in the world at the time. Okay, if you just look at a map here, it shows those two alliance systems. So, again, I think the advantage of communication and troop movement, sharing of resources is a big advantage for Germany and Austria-Hungary, just because they share a border, right? Like, it's much more difficult for France and Russia to share resources and troops because the enemy is between them, right? At the same time, they do have to fight a war on two fronts, right? Germany has to fight Russia over here, and Germany has to fight France over here, right? They can't concentrate all their forces in one direction, all right? Okay, as far as innovations in warfare, again, we said this is an industrialized war. We'll see a lot of new technologies here, and we'll focus even more on that in the next lecture. But weapons at this time are being manufactured, okay, by machines, so much more efficient, much more consistency, and a couple examples of new technology would be submarines, poison gas, long-range artillery, machine guns, airplanes, tanks. Again, we'll talk more about that in the next lecture, but just a few examples there. It even suggests here soldiers were manufactured, through the drafts, and anyone not drafted was basically supporting their country's war effort in some way. Okay, and when a nation commits all of its resources to a war effort, we call this total war. Okay, total war, and is another one of your vocabulary words. All right. So really quickly, early years of the war, Germany will launch its main attack on France, pushing as far as the Marne River near Paris. Obviously, their goal is to capture Paris. The Battle of the Marne, however, will basically halt the German advance and really change the face of the war. All right, hopes for a quick victory end, and what happens is basically both sides dig in. Okay, trench systems are formed that basically form the Western Front for the remaining years of the war, and neither side will really be able to break through to the other side. France is desperately asking Russia to attack Germany or put a greater pressure on Germany from the east, but Russia is ill-equipped to do so. Okay, and Germany will actually be somewhat successful on the Eastern Front as well. This is an example, or I'm sorry, a map showing the German advance into France, and you can see Paris over here, and sort of the extent, just how close they got to Paris, but then where they were defeated, pushed back, and this blue line, the trench lines, this sort of represents that Western Front, okay, the system of trenches. All right. Okay, so this is the last slide, and this just basically is where we will leave off today. Called a stalemate. Okay, for any of you chess players out there, stalemate is basically where no one wins, right? No one can win. Leaders on both sides begin to doubt they could ever break through the other's line of trenches. And as both armies continuously attack and exchange small areas of land over and over again, not really accomplishing anything, it becomes what we call a war of attrition. Okay, another vocabulary word. That just basically means seeing who can outlast the other side, right? Seeing who's going to run out of soldiers first, or who's going to run out of munition first, right? Who's going to run out of food first. One side will quit before the other, and then the other will be the winner. Okay, so we call this the stalemate. This is where we'll leave off for today, and the next lecture we have will be basically examining technologies and trench life during this war. Okay, we will see you next time. Thanks.